All right, everybody, something a little bit different here at Phanteks. I'm here with Tenzin, CTO and designer of all things at Phanteks. And I'm here to talk about the T30, but not the T30 that you know, the T30-140 millimeter that we've been waiting for now for like 2 years. So the first thing I wanted to say is thank you very much for taking the time to be on camera with me.
Good having you here, yeah.
And
I'm very happy to talk about it.
Finally, right? Because we've been talking about this now from CES 2 to 3 years ago, Computex last year, and now finally we're going to be releasing it into the market. So can you tell me a little bit more about why this took so long for the 140 millimeter?
Yeah, especially T30-140 has been a roller coaster. So of course we meet at every event, and there's a lot I would like to talk about, but the project went everywhere, all over the place. So there's so much happening. You're not sure if it's good enough or not. And with the T30, both with 120 and with 140, even more so, we're not going to release until we're 100% happy with it. You know, it's an uncompromised fan, and I think I'm very happy. You know, you were been waiting 2 years. I've been waiting at least 6 years. I remember 2018. I've been making the first drawings. So really, I'm also very happy that we're finally putting it out there.
So that's like 2019. Sometimes I don't think we realize how long some of this development takes, how much forward thinking it needs to happen in terms of partners and things like that. So talk to me a little bit more about Sunon and how this has now developed into a 140 millimeter model, and maybe some of the challenges that were involved in developing specifically that 140 millimeter design.
Yeah, so with working with Sunon really has been great. Like they have so much experience and so much knowledge, and you know their equipment is absolutely perfect. So that's been a great help in getting there. And but over the years, what we've been slowly learning that making the 140 has like some very unique challenges. Like a 140 is great at moving high, big volumes of air, and that's kind of easy. So you
just
fall
throwing
into
air into a cylinder, so to speak.
And our trap was, you know, you can make it even more quite easily. Have it more air because the thickness is 30. We're going LCP fan, so it gives you a lot of possibilities, and it's quite easy to increase the volume. And then at the very end, you go through a lengthy evaluation process, and you find out like, oh, it's kind of like a trap. You went into the high volume of air direction, where most people, they're going to use it in the most difficult scenarios, having high density radiators and proper dust filters and so on. And that's where 140, you know, has some challenges. And even our 120, you know, it was pretty close. It was like, oh, that's not good enough. So. And I think we got the prototypes of earlier versions here.
There's some of these.
Yeah, this one. We went all the way to the finish line. It was done. It was very good.
And this was specifically the 140.
Yeah, this is the 140.
So they got almost there, almost to release.
It was all the way done, and we've been sitting on the results for at least half a year. And we say like it's just not there yet, and we kind of started over again. And we really adjusted our focus on radiator performance to really tackle the difficult part of a 140 millimeter fan.
So you were targeting really the very high resistance radiators, not necessarily air coolers or even as a case fan.
Yeah. So with the T30-140, we aim to tackle the difficult challenge. That really sets it apart, I think, from all the other fans.
So I also noticed that you've gone downwards in the RPM level now to 2,500.
Yeah.
Can you explain a little bit more about that?
I know it's a smaller number, but if you would hold it, which I don't recommend, 2,500 on a 140 millimeter fan is a lot more scary than 3,000 on the 120. So I know it's a smaller number, but it's a lot
smaller
more
is not necessarily worse.
Yeah.
And the other thing I wanted to talk to you about very quickly is not necessarily the amount of air these fans move, which is impressive, right? Yeah. It's the quality of the sound that they produce and how you've tuned that, especially for 140 millimeter, which not only you're dealing with bearing noise and you're dealing with everything else that goes on, but it's also just the volume of air, and the movement of that air causes quite a bit of noise that is sort of beyond the fan.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. And a lot of times, even when you look at the specs, you know, there's a few numbers listed, like how much air it's moving, how much pressure it can put behind it. And as we're developing over the years, we found out like there's a very important value which is the direction of the air, you know. And if you have a high density radiator behind it, the direction matters a lot. And it could, maybe you have one fan like this, our previous one, it could put out more fan, but it would put it at an kind of an unfortunate angle for radiators. And that made us, in the end, basically start over and get that portion fixed. So if you put it on a machine and test it and list it on the website, our numbers might be slightly lower. But if you test it on a real computer and list the temperature at the same noise level and a better sound quality, the numbers are much better.
So I also wanted to talk a little bit about the T30 lineup as a whole. There was a lot of people who were commenting a little while ago that you couldn't find the T30s, the 120 millimeters.
Yeah.
And everybody was afraid that they might have been discontinued. That is false. There were some manufacturing delays, but other than that, we're going full force still with the 120.
Oh yeah, and we'll still continue, and I think it's there's no compromise on material, on assembly, and that's causing sometimes some difficulties, and sometimes really practical stuff like the tooling wears down quicker because of the material we use and a very high glass fiber content. So it wears down quickly. So tooling maintenance is an important factor. There might be delays, there might be shipping issues, of course. And each of our fan is individually balanced as well. So the tolerance is so small. So materials need to be checked and verified. And sometimes during the material preparation or production process, there can be delays because the tolerances are so tight.
So the other thing that I just very quickly wanted to touch upon is pricing. These aren't your entry-level fans. Everybody knows that, right? These are high-end fans. So what are we looking at? We have a single pack and a triple pack. So pricing?
It's for our 140, we're going to offer our single pack at $39.99 and our triple pack at $114.99.
And then the last thing I was just noticing when moving the fan around, I mean, other than the fact that you still have your mode selector switch, which is something that we absolutely love because people who sort of hook this up and set it and forget it, it gives you that maximum RPM level and zone that you sort of are comfortable with without having to mess with the PWM or fan curves or anything else. But there's also a small change in the color of the center bearing. Yeah. Is there something to that?
Okay, so honestly, aesthetics was not a thing for this fan. It's all work, right? And this is as far as we went for aesthetic purposes. So it's actually the same material, but we made it a more neutral color theme. This is just
there's something about that sort of like gold
end.
Copper though.
But it does, I know, yeah. It does.
So when should we see these in the retail channel in North America, worldwide?
I think it's depending on where you are. It could be end of June, early July. It should be become available.
Perfect. So anyways, it's finally. So it's the T30 that a lot of people have been waiting for those larger radiators and things like that. So Tenzin, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
I've got a couple of other fan products here to cover, and we're going to jump to that right now. Okay, so the next stop on the journey here is the X30. So we all know the T30, which we already talked about, and then the D30, which is based on the T30 design as well. Well, this is the X30, another T30, I guess you would say, derivative. So what this is basically your D30, but in a single unified frame in both 360 and 420, and I believe that there's going to be a 240 and 280 version as well. Unified frame like this, I'm not quite convinced of. The look is very, very sleek, especially with what Phanteks has gone with here is a beautiful aluminum frame. It's well machined, everything else. There's no RGB on the side, but there are these integrated RGB elements in the fan itself. The reason why I'm not convinced about this is simply a failure situation, right? If one of these fans goes, you're replacing the entire unit. But hopefully, it doesn't take a crap. The other thing I wanted to mention about this is that it's going to be available in black and in white, and forwards and reverse. Right now, it's still a working sample, an engineering sample. There's no release date, there's no price at this point in time. But yeah, I want to know what your opinions are about this. Do you like the clean look? Are you willing to sacrifice maybe the replacement of a single fan or two fans if they start having problems for this look? That's really what I want to know. Next thing is, yes, another AIO with an LCD. Right, I might not have sounded excited about this, but there are a couple of unique features about the Glacier 1 360 M25 LCD. So basically what it is the M25 360mm AIO, which we've already seen quite a bit of. It's actually a very, very good AIO that you're going to see very soon in a 360 millimeter AIO roundup. So what we have is a 6-inch LCD that can be mounted horizontally or vertically. So it's not the typical sketchy sort of arm that you see sometimes on these LCDs where they're wobbling all over the place. Now, what Phanteks did is they've given it a system on the back that has 2 integrated rails along with these notches, and what that allows you to do is shift it left and right. So let's say you have some beautiful RAM modules. Well, you just shift it to the left over the motherboard I/O area. Say if you have like an ROG board and you just want to show that ROG logo, well, you move it over your RAM modules, or you just keep it centered. Installation of that is pretty simple. You just push it up, lock it in, and then push it down, and it's completely locked in place as long as you're sort of lined up with those notches. The other thing I wanted to mention here is that it does run off of USB 2. So all of this goes from a USB-C header here onto a USB header on your motherboard, which provides both data and all of the power necessary. This eventually will run through their NextLink software, which we've seen in the past. You'll actually see that running on the Evolve X2 Matrix that Dimitri has been talking about in one of his videos. So anyways, the idea here is an integrated ecosystem that allows for the control of LCDs, of the pixel displays on those cases, and of course the RGB fans. So look, the most excited that I've been for a fan in a while has to be for that T30-140. Our 140 millimeter fan roundup is probably now going to have to be pushed back just a little bit further until that thing comes out, because it's going to be interesting where that lies. So anyways, I'm Mike with Hardware Canucks from Phanteks, and I hope you enjoyed this video. I'll see you in the next one. Take care, guys.